All right. Good afternoon. Here with my good friend Mark Charest. Dr. Charest, looks like a beautiful day in Puerto Rico to get things going, is it?
Yeah, it's a beach day, you know it without even
We got
asking.
snow. It's snowing in Omaha, so I'll live vicariously through you. Well, today we're going to talk about the tabloids to start off our conversation. Kate Middleton, of a royal variety, just diagnosed with cancer. Very interesting to see her in the headlines, not only of the news and the tabloids, but in your neck of the woods too. Tell us a little bit how something that happens to Kate Middleton impacts biotech.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think it's a sobering reminder that we all depend on, the armamentarium of treatments that are available in the healthcare system. And, I think few details have been disclosed about, the type of cancer it might be. I think what we've read so far is, she's receiving some type of treatment, but I think it, really speaks very loudly to, the need for expanding this treatment armamentarium, pushing forward the frontiers of science to, cure more cancers, right? There are some cancers, Jonathan, that, there's really great solutions for, but unfortunately, there's many where, projected survival can be months or, very short periods of time, relatively. So hopefully this, gets into the public consciousness in a positive way for, supportive innovation.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and it kind of leads us into the market in general. It seems like the momentum factor is the dominant feature in the biotech world today. Hot money chasing hot returns. Talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how is momentum impacting biotech? How come we're not seeing a broadening out of performance from the index or from the sector in general, but it seems to be confined to just a few at the top?
Yeah, I think we've seen this, we're borrowing this from the broader market with, stocks like Nvidia and others that, are really leading to gains. And interestingly enough, we're seeing it in biotech too, as you mentioned, right? There's, a handful of companies that are up 3, 4, 5, 600% in just a few months. And many of them are kind of story stocks in the sense that, they're earlier clinical stage companies that have a potential large opportunity in front of them and have a little bit of data or some adjacent data that suggests could be interesting, and some of these things have really gotten on the momentum train. One good example is Tourmaline Bio. TRML is the ticker here, Jonathan. So this stock, was a $10 stock kind of October last year. A couple weeks ago, it was almost 50. And they really hadn't released any data in that time. They did raise a little bit of money, et cetera, but it was the same company at 10 as it was at 50. And interestingly enough, one of their competitors, who was a little further ahead, Chugai and Roche, announced data from their interleukin 6 program, their own interleukin 6 program, in an indication called generalized myasthenia gravis, and that trial was negative. So it's an autoimmune indication. IL-6 is an interleukin that can help blunt immune response. Bottom line was data was negative, and so Tourmaline stock, it has gone straight down. Even though, interestingly enough, so Tourmaline has an IL-6 inhibitor as their lead program. They're not even running a trial in myasthenia gravis. They're not even running a trial in it, and their stock went down almost 50% on news from a competitor. Tourmaline's actually has two completely different indications they're going after. So, I think I go through this in a little detail to kind of highlight for folks that, there's been some of these extraordinary kind of story moves. Some of them are partially justified, some of them are less justified. And, I think that over the year, we're going to get a broadening out and I think we're going to see more fundamental driven stock performance.
Yeah, I've heard you talk a little bit about, there has to be a reversion to the mean, and that can be both directions, right? It can bring some of the high flyers down, but it can also bring some ordinary type of stocks up where we start to see rates influence the broader market. That would lead to more M&A. That would mean, take advantage of the favorable regulatory market that we'll see. And, a company like Celldex, which has significant pullback or some pullback, strong balance sheet, maybe that starts to be more attractive. What are you seeing from companies like Celldex or some of these other with good fundamentals?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because they announced some pretty interesting data for their own autoimmune and anti-inflammatory program earlier in the year. And they raised over $500 million in a follow-on, Jonathan, on the back of that data, at $47. And, we're sitting here in the stocks of, around 40 today, with a very healthy balance sheet, almost $1 billion of cash pro forma this recent deal, great data in hand, a clear path forward. So, the stock looks to be much more interesting and potentially a better risk reward today than it was, earlier in the year. And, some of these things that have pulled back and consolidated, can really be opportunities. So again, and I think, our view from here, kind of into the next couple quarters is we're going to get through this rebalancing in the first quarter. We think that's going to help shake out some of this, momentum, which has gotten a little too hot. Certainly, it's way too hot, I think, in the broader market. It's got, it's spilled over into biotech, as we're talking about. We think there's going to be a little bit of a broadening out. And look, we think that there's still some nice tailwinds behind the sector, Jonathan, that, are going to propel us higher over time.
Yeah, things seem cheap. That's for sure. You know what? You got me thinking about something. Tell us about these follow-on investing dynamics. How does that work? I assume I cannot participate in a follow-on type of investment, but who can and how does that work? How do you invest in those?
Yeah, so the follow-ons, there's different types of structures, but generally you have an underwriter, it's an investment bank that forms a consortium. So maybe there's a couple banks involved, depending on the size of the transaction, whereby they can sell to their clients, kind of outside of market hours, the shares in the offering, and the proceeds for those offerings go directly into the company's balance sheet. So in order to participate, you have to be an institutional investor. You have to have a relationship with, the underwriter, an account open there, et cetera. And oftentimes you have to have a relationship with the company. Some of these deals aren't marketed publicly. Some of them are only announced after sort of the deal is done. As I mentioned, some different structures here, but there's quite a bit of work that goes on behind the scenes, kind of outside of market hours, to get these transactions done.
And shares are exchanged, and where do you fall in the general waterfall after these follow-on shares are acquired?
Yeah, so they're all generally they're going to be common shares that are freely tradable for a follow-on offering. There are some structures where that's not the case, where they'll be restricted or locked up shares, or they can be, in the form of, warrants or certain things. So, there's different structures, based on it, but I'd say the most common, like the Celdex offering, I'm thinking as an example, those were fully registered shares that were tradable.
Fully registered. Well, it's good to hear. I mean, I think we're near the 50-day moving average in the sector. We've kind of gone up and down so far this year, and it sounds like you're pretty optimistic about the end of the quarter rebalancing, which is only a couple of days away. So it looks like April, May, June are going to be some interesting months for the biotech sector, and probably good to be paying attention to things to buy on the cheap.
Yeah, we think so. Again, I think the big theme take home for folks is a lot of stocks have not participated yet. A lot of stocks that are in front of interesting data later this year or have competitors or adjacent data sets that could be favorable. We think there's going to be general tailwinds for the sector. We're actually really excited about, seeing a broader participation and more upside from here to the end of the year.
Well, we're excited as well. Thanks, Mark. This has been a good one. I'm excited to see how next quarter shapes up for sure heading into the second half of the year. It's exciting times in biotech, and hopefully the princess, Kate Middleton, gets the treatment she does, and that treatment trickles down to the rest of us.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Have a great day. Appreciate your time. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have a good one. We'll talk to you next month.